Cave dwellers hunted the horse for food. But as humankind evolved, so did its relationship with the horse. Humans began to see the horse as a noble creature, a loyal servant, and a true companion. And so it has been. For 5,000 years, the horse running with us through different lands and civilizations, through time and experience. Today, the services of the horse have been greatly diminished, but the bond between horse and human has never been stronger. Join us as we examine this fascinating relationship in a 6-part series, The Horse.
Up and over that final jump, and there's our new class leading time.
Majestic power and precise agility perfected through eons of survival in the wild animal world. By now, their stature and stride are refined by centuries of human ownership. Even after thousands of years of close contact, we still return a horse's gaze, not quite sure what they're thinking or feeling. But thinking and feeling they are. Ask anyone close to a horse.
I think Gold is alive because of Miranda. I think that's why she gets up in the morning.
It's really hard on a horse when they've got a close friend that they lose.
She was mad about it, and she picked a fight wherever she could.
When you separate them, they certainly have, what we'd call separation anxiety.
Join us as we consider the not-so-visible domain of the horse. The way horses think, the way they feel, and the way they respond to the world around them. The horse is a grazing animal, a grass eater, originally an animal of the open plain where it was preyed upon by roaming meat eaters. The horse's sense and sensibilities have been shaped over time by its primary needs: to eat and not be eaten. As with most animals who are preyed upon by others, strength resides in numbers. For horses, the herd is a part of who they are.
Definitely have a pecking order, and there is definitely groups, usually like ages and things like that kind of stick together. We find we only have 3 mares, so the girls will stick together. They kind of have their own little pack. You can tell when we bring a new horse into the herd, they get kind of run out for the first couple of days, and you can watch them because as the progression moves, they're allowed in a little bit closer and a little bit closer, and then eventually if another new horse comes, the last new horse is now part of the herd, and he's the one chasing the new guy away. The mares will be more motherly towards the new horse, especially if they're new young horses coming in. They kind of try to take them under their wing a little bit, at least for the first little while, and then they'll push them out and say, okay, it's time for you to go out on your own. Mostly the older guys, like the 29s and 27s, they kind of hang out by themselves and just kind of, we're the old guys, nobody's going to challenge us, we've been here forever, and we're just going to bide our time now on the outskirts of the herd. We're protected and we're looked after, and you can tell the young guys will stand up for some of the older horses.
In the horse world, 27 and 29-year-olds are the senior citizens of a herd of horses. And in Dana's herd, they get the respect they deserve.
My old mare, Penny, she is still the queen of the field. Like we laugh because she has like bouncers. If she makes a face at somebody, this gelding will go chase them away for her. But you know, when it comes to feed time and it's time to come in, the most aggressive and the highest on the pecking order will come in first. And you'll notice the older, kind of more docile horses will wait until the younger guys are in and wait for their supper.
In a domestic situation, the idea of herd leadership can get pretty interesting. There can be different leaders with different jobs.
In my herd, which is 6 horses, it's hard to know who's the leader because in reality, that leadership changes according to the situation and to what's being decided. Who goes first might be one element of leadership. Who eats first might be another. So there isn't an absolute leader in a lot of domestic herds. There's often a passive leader, which would be more like Gold. She doesn't boss people around, but she's actually the one who cares where everyone is. And then there's the more active alpha guy who busts people off his hay. And that's more of, that's actually not a protective quality, it's a more me first quality. The hierarchy, it's an interesting concept and it definitely works, but it's much more fluid and kind of flexible than I think a lot of people understand. Gold is a very maternal horse, so she actually watches out for the herd. She wants to know where everybody is. She's looking around when she doesn't see everybody. If they get turned out without her, she waits, and when they come back, it's a big, hello. So she has that kind of watching for the others element in her personality. Horses are very cooperative creatures, and that's the fact that they live in herds, that's their survival. They have to depend on each horse's gift to kind of add to the whole. And so it's really against their nature to spend too much time squabbling about who gets to be with who because of jealousy. I mean, around mating season, everything gets elevated and stallions, behave much more differently than they do the rest of the time. The rest of the time, stallions are hanging out with their mares and their foals and just one of the guys.
But there are times when all is not peace and tranquility in the horse's world.
This white fellow, his name is Phil. He's a very old pony. He's about 45. He had a very high status in the herd for many years. Like when he came, he had a lot of power. He was old, but quite wise and quite respected by the other horses. He just had to give the look and they would move. But as he got weaker over the last year, I guess typical to herd nature, they banished him from the herd and turned on him. And he no longer can go out with them, which is why we have him in here protected, because he's just lost his power, his status, and he would be the one left behind in the wild now that wouldn't be able to keep up with the herd.
And in the natural scheme of things, the old failing horse would be taken for food by animals of prey, ever on the lookout for an easy kill. But not this time. Phil is in good hands and will have the company he needs.
This is Dusty. He holds fairly high status. He's not a big boss or anything, but he's certainly respected out there and pretty strong in the place he holds in the herd. We sometimes they'll put him in here with the old fellow Phil to keep Phil company. And interesting enough, when there's just the two of them, Phil regains his head honcho status and Dusty kind of just babysits, right, sometimes.
Horses can have their own mind about how the herd structure works for them, and with that come likes and dislikes, and personality conflicts. Carolyn remembers a horse she saved from being sold to the meat market. When the rescued horse was introduced to the herd, Carolyn didn't exactly get the reaction she was hoping for.
The other horses did not accept her at all. They felt like she was coming in to take over everything, and they really were not accepted of her in the least. So they used to have kicking matches, and between the little ponies and Minnie and Kara, they just were not going to mesh at all. She was mad about it, and she picked a fight wherever she could. She didn't want to be managed. I guess she wanted to do what she wanted to do.
The new horse was not prepared to accept the existing herd hierarchy and wasn't about to be dictated to by anyone.
Any animal that comes into a group is trying to find the pecking order. And of course, they come into the group saying, I'm the boss. They all do that. They need to fight for their position as the boss in the pecking order, but now the boss is going to fight to keep her position there. So they're not going to let down until they've satisfied themselves about who is who in the group. They have their pecking order down. Minnie is the boss, and that's the darker brown horse. And Luna there is in second place, and she's in third place, and takes very good pleasure in beating the big standardbred every day if she can, to make sure that she stays in her place. So she fights for it daily.
Even within this competitive herd structure, horses manage to form friendships. In pairs or in threes and fours, horses often bond and can come to rely on each other for group support.
Horses, some are much more need friendships and need that close bond. Some are more independent, but all of them are better off with another horse around. Most horses that are bonded are friends, and they're buddies. They hang out together, they keep the flies off each other, they groom each other. And all my horses do that with all the other horses in different ways, so they have different qualities of friendship. Gold's case, it is actually more like a mare and a foal. She has all the behaviors of a mare with a foal. She does get upset when she's not with Miranda, and then it's like a different horse altogether. It's like some 3-year-old, having a hissy fit.
The interactions within the herd are not just a matter of leaders and followers. There are other social dynamics going on too. Just like humans, horses will sometimes form such strong companionships and attachments that it's nearly impossible for the owner to be with one horse and not the other.
When you separate them, they certainly have, what we'd call separation anxiety, because they'll continue to be fidgety and to neigh until they're reunited again. If the one was outside in the pasture and the other one was in the barn or in another pasture, they would constantly be running around wondering why they couldn't be joined together. So they certainly do have feelings for each other. It works well when someone needs to do something with a horse that the horse might react against. Let's say, for example, if it's taking some kind of medication or having shoes put on or adjusted. If the horse can see that other animal in close proximity, it has a settling effect on the horse, and that is the whole idea behind it.
The buddy system works for horses like it does for humans, to have someone nearby for comfort in a time of stress. On the other hand, having a buddy suddenly disappear can itself be stressful.
I can't take one away from the other. And if I take one, the other one is down here crying quite significantly to say I want to go, and doesn't like it one bit. Even though she can be the boss here, she really does not like to see him go anywhere without her. And so she's very attached to him, and I think he's very attached to her. I mean, the two of them are constantly together here around the property. They always are sleeping together or eating together or, poking around in the barn, but they're never more than a few feet apart. It's very unusual for them to be apart in any way at all.
The survival of horses in the wild depends on a firmly structured herd, with clearly drawn lines about who leads and who follows. When humans appear on the scene and domesticate the horse, the herd takes on another meaning.
They have to respect the human, because the human is the one that works around them and has contact with them, and needs to, if they get hurt, needs to be able to take care of them, and they need to trust and respect the human. You know, if they were wild, obviously there'd be a lead horse being a horse. But since they're in a domestic situation, I have to be the lead horse.
Now, with the role of the lead horse taken over by a human, the social dynamics move beyond a survival-dictated herd structure, making way for more complex connections and relationships. Values important to humans, like friendship, loyalty, and trust, are added to the mix.
It's really important to have that trust between the rider and the horse. You're demanding a lot of your horse, especially if you're involved with competition and any sort of training. You're demanding a lot of your horse, and the horse needs to be willing and wanting to work for you. And if you develop that relationship and that bond, you can really get a special relationship and a lot of results out of your horse and yourself as a team. There's definitely interaction that goes on every day that you would have with, similar to what you'd have with other people or other animals you'd have in your life. So they have a personality and they react to different things just as you would as well. It would be very hard to imagine a life without horses. They've been such a huge part of my life since I was so young. I really can't imagine not being involved with it, really.
Being involved in horses for as long as I have, you need to form a bond with your horse in order to be able to do anything with it. Like I've had this horse for 7 years. I was there when she was born, and I can do anything to her. I can take her and throw her on the trailer and travel her across the province, and she comes off and she'll do whatever I ask her to because she trusts me.
Trust between horse and owner comes with demands. There's a lot going on in what may seem a simple connection between animal and human.
The horse is going to react to your body language, and that really tells a lot. Like often as human beings, we get very socialized and very conditioned to having to not be very authentic in terms of our own feelings or how we feel, and we often present a very false sense of who we are. They will base trust on what we're sending out. The horse is going to watch and mirror back what that person is demonstrating through their own body language, and therefore a trust develops that's very much based on authentic feelings.
So that trust has to develop. It doesn't just happen. It takes honesty and it takes patience.
When we first got her, she was very much didn't like anyone touching her, brushing her, I remember when I first got her, if I just tried to rub her nose, she actually tried to bite me back. And I think after time, she realized that I wasn't going to hurt her and that there was no aggression there, and that made a big difference in how she now responds. So now I can go up to her and do anything that I want with her, and there's no fear there. It's something that you learn and the horses learn with regards to how you deal with them. And it's strictly, a non-language thing. It's just a question of how you handle them.
For horse lovers, human interaction with their animal companion can blur the differences between them. But this overlap can only go so far.
There are a number of differences between horses and people, and probably the one that's most interesting and most important to the way they live is that they can eat grass and we can't. All you need to do is look around us today and you see how much grass there is here and how much grass there is on this planet. So it's a very advantageous thing for a mammal to be able to eat grass.
Although humans also eat vegetation, few of us could survive on grass. One of the many differences we have in our makeup. For instance, we have different hearts.
Very fit people usually would have a heart rate maybe 50 beats a minute. An averagely fit horse would have a heart rate that's down 15 beats per minute. What that implies is that a horse has a tremendous reserve from where they're standing around eating grass until they want to really move, when they really want to run. The other thing that you can see in athletic ability with a horse is the size of the muscles. If you just look at the back legs of a horse and think about how much muscle there is in there and what power can be generated by those legs compared to the amount of muscle that the average person would have up in the thigh area, there's really no comparison at all.
For horses to survive and thrive, athletic strength and agility were not enough. They had to have well-developed sense organs. Sights, sounds, and smells provided the horse with its cues for action in the face of danger. Unlike us, who see a single panoramic view with our eyes positioned on the front of our heads, horses' eyes are located towards the sides of their heads and can see a different image on each side, or a combined image when looking straight ahead. Like us, they do have blind spots. They have to turn their heads to see directly behind and to see the area directly in front up close. Horses can change their focus instantly to detect near or far images, and particularly moving objects. On a windy day, the slightest movement can startle a horse into action. When it comes to hearing, a horse's specialized outer ear structure with 10 different muscles can rotate 180 degrees like an antenna, instantly detecting the slightest noise. The horse's range of smell is finer than ours, but not as sensitive as its traditional predators like cougars and wolves. With their noses, horses test their food. And they can identify other horses by smell. By snorting warm air on each other, they exchange greetings when they meet. Some horse people actually emulate this behavior by blowing on their horse's nostrils as a show of friendship. Horses have thick skins to protect them from the elements, but their sense of touch is acute and works with their other senses to keep them in tune with their immediate environment. A bite from a tiny fly can cause a horse to suddenly bolt, while the same horse's skin can handle the pressure and friction of a full set of tackle and the load that goes with it. Thick skin notwithstanding, the way to a horse's heart is through touch. Of course, a treat doesn't hurt either. Touch, smell, hearing, sight. When these senses send a message, the brain responds instantaneously, and a four-legged package of power and speed bursts into action.
They are a prey animal. They will always be a prey animal, and their instincts and their behaviors and language will always be such. They are not a predator, so they're very unlike a dog or a cat. Their reactions, their emotions, everything is very natural, very authentic. That's how they survive. They may be scared one minute if a predator comes along, but then once the danger is done, they will quickly go back to grazing and relaxing. They're not going to hold on to or spend the whole day thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to be killed, that predator's coming back.
This ability of the horse to change gears, to switch from hyper-focused, heart-pounding flight back to relaxed, grass-munching serenity, is one of many complex body-brain functions that make the horse such a fascinating animal. Even after centuries living with people, the horse's animal survival instincts remain central to its behavior, a vivid reminder of the horse's origins in a hostile wilderness. Perhaps no horse is more in tune with her instincts than a mare about to give birth to a foal. Giving birth is meant to be a solitary event, away from the gaze of other creatures, including people. Birth takes place quickly, with a minimum of fuss and commotion.
When a horse decides to deliver a foal, they mean business. It's over very quickly, and if you've got problems, you usually, if you live more than a few minutes away from the veterinarian, you don't have time to get a veterinarian there before you're into a catastrophe.
But catastrophes are rare, and the delivery is over with almost immediately. Foals will stand up and nurse after birth and can trot and canter within hours. That way it can escape from predators. And although horses like to hide when they're birthing, some horse people can't resist the urge to witness the arrival of their new foal.
Back when Wembley was being born, myself and one of my close friends decided we would spend the evening in the stable to see it. And then we had set up cots and stuff in the middle of the barn and kind of camped out. We went to clean Penny's stall that evening and it was very wet. Her water had broken. They do make quite a bit of noise when they're giving birth. So as she started to push and started to grunt, we woke up and were able to witness it. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. It was a miracle, really. It was amazing.
By observing what the older animals do, the foal gradually gets the hang of things. When humans want to develop a young horse beyond its natural capacities for living wild, the process becomes one of deliberate teaching and training. A process that takes lots of time, patience, and smarts for the horse, and for the trainer lots of knowledge, skill, and a genuine love for horses.
Good job. Pat him down.
Where once its development was provided by the influences of adult horses, now the young horse is subjected to a human education specifically chosen to fit the role the horse is intended for. Traditionally, horse training has been pretty much a matter of repetition, reinforcement, and reward. Today, more and more horse owners and trainers are exploring new approaches.
A horse will respond based on how it's treated, and you do not have to be overly aggressive in any way with a horse. The least aggression, the better. They're very sensitive animals, and in doing that, that teaches the individual to temper their actions, temper how they respond to things. Everything you do with a horse, you do subtly, and in doing that, it's a great experience for the horse, but also for the individual in trying to train a horse.
Gentleness versus aggression, encouragement instead of force, motivation more than direction.
A lot of times what you'll see is a lot of people have horses that are problem horses or aggressive, and in a lot of cases they try every different method out there and try the most gentle one the last. In a lot of cases that turns the horse around. And just having someone to understand them, because a lot of times they're just confused. We don't give them good direction, and it's hard for them to understand if things are not clearly put out for them.
Cynthia uses gentle training methods for her horses to help develop coordination, balance, and athletic ability, even before riding exercises and drills. She also puts a lot of emphasis on strengthening the communication and understanding between horse and owner.
I've always been drawn to a different type of training method, and a lot of times people have to be open to different methods. It's like a lot of the training world has changed from a more dominant, forceful training to a more gentle, positive, reward-based training. So if you look in the dog world as well as the horse world, you'll see a lot of trainings done with those methods now. And you can probably get a lot of horses to do a lot more with trust and just, gentle methods. So that's my hope with him, is to train him and a few years down the road, have him respond to a lot of subtle cues and not have to use a lot of force with him.
In the disciplined police world, you might expect the old tried and true training regime, but not necessarily so with Jim Penton.
He is responding to, I won't say verbal commands because we don't give them verbal commands. They respond to my touch and my feel. And the best way to explain it, if I could, is the command of holding Vince is 30% legs, 60% my seat, and 10% hands. So all the reins and stuff you see on the horse, very soft on his mouth. You had a steel bit in his mouth, you don't want to be yanking and pulling on him. So if I were in a crowd, I would just collect up my reins just to get his attention. I would apply the right inside of my calf, a little touch of his head, and we should go sideways. So that would get the crowd there. To go back the other way, the opposite. Left leg, just a little check back so he doesn't go forward on me, and stop. That would move someone. To have Vince go forward, 2 legs together, a little squeeze, and forward we go. And stop, just a little check of the rein. To back up, give him a little bit of forward motion and then collect him up, and very soft. Back, back, back. If I want to have him turn in the crowd, stance up. Just pivot on what we call pivot on the 4. His front feet should be staying pretty much in a box while we're just spinning around here very softly, looking at everybody. He's just doing exactly what I ask him. There you go, some basic maneuvers, 1,900 pounds in motion. What else can you ask for?
For those who work with horses, recognizing their emotional side is not sentimentalism. In fact, it's key to the professional relationship.
They know when they win and they know when they lose. After the race, I stop and I pet them. I'm like, way to go, buddy. And they don't know what I'm saying, but they understand the happiness in your voice, and I'm sure they feel it. And I know that horses have a sense. Like I can feel the movement in your body, just happiness.
Horses responding, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. And not always an outward response. Maybe horses internalize some of their feelings the way we often do.
They get upset about things. Horses that lose a mate will become depressed. Horses are obviously agitated when things change in their surrounding. If something changes in the barn, or they get sent to a new owner, or they're not fed in the right time, those kinds of things bother them. So certainly to that degree, they feel the same kind of emotions that people would feel.
He's good to go. Back to his stall. All horses are different, and they're different with different people. You know, there are horses in this barn that previous veterinarians haven't had a hitch with. That the first time I've dealt with them, they want to jump through the roof. When you're approaching the animal, you just want to take your time, and usually if the horse starts, is moving around a lot or sort of throwing its head around at you, the horse will pretty much tell you, whether or not they're going to be difficult for you to handle. There are some horses that, I've had to do some invasive procedures on, that when I walk in the barn, I could walk up to, I could go to different barns and walk in, and if I walk up to the horse's stall, the horse is fine with everyone else. When the horse sees me or hears my voice, the horse becomes rigid and goes to the back of the stall and doesn't want anything to do with me.
Horses can put things out of their mind, but they also have excellent long-term memories. Wild horses' survival depended on remembering locations where predator attacks took place, so it could avoid that spot in the future. Lynn talks about her foal's memory.
Zoe went away to be weaned after 5 months, and she was gone for a year, and then she came back. I had a lot of people say, do you think they'll know each other? What's going to happen? And what she did was she looked between her hind legs to see if those little faucets were still working. So she recognized the fact that this was her mother. She also knew that things had changed, the relationship had changed.
Fear, anger, happiness, all states of feeling we recognize in ourselves, all emotions shared with horses. Even at 50 miles an hour, a world champion jockey can sense the emotion beneath him.
It's amazing, these horses are trained to be competitive. They're put in workout patterns and training lessons through the morning to teach them that winning is the goal that they're after. And I've ridden horses whereas they haven't been winning races, and you can feel them underneath you where they're lacking confidence. They just don't seem to have that same confidence. Then all of a sudden things will turn around and they'll get to win a race, and you can just feel their heart explode and they get a big smile on their face.
Jim's fellow jockey, Chantal Sutherland, says if she's learned anything in her prize-winning equestrian career, it's to always pay attention to what her horse is communicating.
They'll kind of tell you, like their ears flutter when they're happy and when they're, upset at you for, petting or doing something or moving on their back. They'll let you know. They'll jump around or they'll pin their ears at you. And so you just sort of, I guess that's the kind of communication you have. You have to just intuitively listen to them.
Chantal has found that certain equine attitudes are more like what girls display.
If you pet them sometimes to calm them down, they get touchy, like, don't touch me, leave me alone, kind of cranky and a little high intensity. So I find I kind of leave them alone sometimes.
And other times she's reminded more of the behavior of boys.
The colts, you'll pet them, they just want more and they love it.
Not all human emotional experiences are mirrored in the horse. For example, as far as we know, horses don't worry about the future the way we do.
They don't know they're old. If they've got food and they're can be out in the sun and they can have their friends, their life is as wonderful as it was when they were 2. So that's a human projection, to kind of feel worried about old age, because they don't. I have one horse that has very severe arthritis, and he walks with a limp a lot of the time. He still loves life, and just like I wouldn't put my husband down because he walks with a limp, I'm not going to put him down because he walks with a limp. Gold has an incredible life force. I mean, she is absolutely ready to go every day. When we got her, she was quite run down because they hadn't realized that she was losing a lot of her teeth. And when we fixed her teeth up, she actually picked up and perked up and became just as lively as she ever had been. She's had some incidences this year where she's gotten down in her stall and not been able to get up, and that's been quite traumatic for her. But she always, once she's up, it's over. She doesn't stay in a bad place about it. And that, again, is a quality of horses that lets them live right to the end. I think Gold is alive because of Miranda. I think that's why she gets up in the morning. And she has a purpose in her life, which is to look after Miranda and to know where she is. And that takes care of 24 hours a day, pretty much. I do worry about the future simply because I know if either one of them died, the other would go into, very intense mourning. And that, is something I just going to have to trust happens in a way that everybody can deal with it.
So if horses don't stress over tragedy or loss before it happens, what about after the fact? Do horses grieve? Do they mourn for their lost loved ones?
Sandy right here, he is a registered Appaloosa, and he's in his late 20s, and he did have a girlfriend, and she had to be put down recently, so he is a little bit depressed about it. Horses do get that way, and he knows that she's gone. I'm sure he thinks about her a lot, and he's having a bit of trouble to put on some weight. It's really hard on a horse when they've got a close friend that they lose. The black pony Queen and the white pony Bonnie, they are in their late 20s. They're always together, all the time, and you never see one without the other. Queen is in better shape than Bonnie. We are very concerned with Bonnie's health right now. The vet has looked at her a few times, and we've had to treat her for a couple weeks with some things that he found. We're not really definite on what's going to happen to her in the near future, so we're just really concerned about her right now. And if Bonnie does leave us, we got to be concerned about Queen, since she will be alone.
As we try to appreciate the way a horse thinks and feels and responds, we're sure to come around to that all-important question. What about love? Do horses fall in love?
The question of horses falling in love is a very difficult one. Is there a difference, and what is the difference between mating and between love? Are those two different things, or is love something that's only necessary for mating? This is a place where horses and most mammals are different from people. Horses are only interested in mating when the female is in heat. So as far as an interest between a male and a female, as far as like a sexual interest, an interest in procreating, that only happens a certain time of the month. And of course, that's very different than in people. What we would call people, I have to be careful here when I talk about what love is, because I'm not sure I know, but if it is related to procreating, people are interested in that all the time. And horses aren't. So if that's what love is about, and again, I'm not sure if that is what love is about, then horses maybe fall in love every 21 days.
Dr. Peacock probably knows that most horse lovers would vigorously challenge his purely physical interpretation. They would be sure to remind him that horses have emotions, and that one of them is love. Horse sense, an expression we use to mean practical intelligence. Horses have that for sure, but the full range of mental and emotional capacities of this beautiful animal are in many ways as complex and mysterious as our own. Perhaps the sharing of these complexities is what shapes the unquestionable bond so often witnessed between horses and between horses and people.
Horses are non-human people. When we talk about horses, we'll say, who's this? Meaning the horse. You know, not what horse is this, but who's this? And we talk about them that way, as though they are people. They are human.
I think they're magical. I think they have energy qualities that are really positive and powerful. The horse. I mean, they're strong, they're powerful, they're beautiful, and they exude energy.
Well, I think he should have been a person if he reincarnated. He loves interacting with people more than he interacts with other horses, to tell you the truth. So in that way, he's really adorable.
The more we observe these intelligent creatures, the deeper grows the bond between us and them. But in the end, not even the closest bond allows us to share the exuberance of a horse galloping to its freedom. There is still much about the wild side of the horse that remains a mystery.